Hello, dear students. In the series of the Western scholars, Sociological Thinkers, the two we have talked about, the first was in terms of Karl Marx, the second one is Emile Durkheim, which we talked about, and another one which we are talking about is the Max Weber. In the classical tradition of sociology, these are the three scholars from where the range of questions have been there. And once you have become comfortable with these three, then we will be moving to the neoclassical one, precisely in terms of Talcott Parsons and Robert King Martin, with yet another edition of G.H. Mead, George Herbert Mead. We will be looking these six scholars in totality, and from there we will be just trying to look at the different other dimension. Now let me, before I begin on Weberian sociology, and the certain issues, methodological concerns, and the themes what Max Weber, the German sociologist, has picked up. I had told you, and time and again I am saying you, that all those who have done sociology or those who are very new in sociology, your prime focus should be on the sociological thinkers. Their ideas are to be segmentalized according to the need of the different units, right from unit 5 to 10 to the unit 2, and also to be extended to the second paper. And these thinkers, when we are trying to understand, we started with the historical backgrounds, intellectual and historical backgrounds or socio-historical background, so that making it easier in part of you to understand that why these themes have emerged in the writings of this scholar. Moreover, the comparative analysis we'll be talking about when we pick up the certain common areas, common themes of these scholars, before which we need to be comfortable with the six. You start with the methodological one. For example, if you are talking about approaching Karl Marx, then historical materialism or dialectical materialism, materialistic interpretation of history, that methodology has to be your prime concern. In Durkheim, we talked about the positivist orientation in terms of causal connectivity and the functionist analysis. Almost every theme which is there in a Weber, likewise. The two methods of Weber are to be used extensively by you in terms of first hand method, we sometimes call first hand because it is a V. In a German language, it is pronounced F. So I am talking about a first hand method and ideal type. Though the nature of questions from Weber, when you start looking at the PYQs, would be there in terms of, or in unit 2, sociology as a science. Even in unit 1, sociology is an interpretative understanding. Or in unit 2, when you talk about the concept of value neutrality and problem of objectivity, they have a specified Weberian perspective as well. Can sociology be value free? That was the same debate I talked about in terms of positivism and non-positivism. Weber would be another important scholar who, along with Marx, will become the base of an analysis in social stratification. Weber would also be there in terms of formal, informal organization, unit 6, theory of power, unit 7, theory of religion, in which Weberian Protestant ethics and the spirit of capitalism would be merging out. And Weber would also be there in terms of patriarchy and a matriarchy, when Weber says that matriarchy is a myth never been realized in the history of mankind. Now, with this dimension, I had told you that our prime concern should be to be comfortable with these 6 scholars and not comfortable, be very confident in these 6 scholars. Thus, now apart from the 2 which we have talked about in detail, I am picking up Max Weber along with your syllabus which is there. Somewhere we find about the similar kind of orientation in Weber, that of the Marx. Weber as an historian, Weber as a political analyst, Weber as an economist, and Weber as a social analyst, sociologist. For which we are now going to the historical and intellectual background. I'll be talking about this. Let me first talk about the themes. Here we'll be talking about sociology of social action. You remember the word that there are 4 types of social action: traditional, affectional, what rational, and joac rational. Use this word, what rational and joac rational. We use it value rational or goal rational, for which we will be talking about what rational and joac rational. The 2 actions will be the most prominent in the writings of Weber, particularly in the analysis of the modern society. And then within which we will be talking about the notion of power and authority, in which bureaucracy has to be viewed. And yet another theme which is there in your syllabus is sociology of realism. Economics and society will be talking about from here. The bureaucracy will be coming out. So sociology of realism, in which we are concerned of Protestant ethics and the spirit of capitalism. And then evaluation and criticism. This is the broader theme on which you need to understand and approach Max Weber, a German sociologist. Once you have done it, then basically we are not talking about the historical and intellectual background. This historical and intellectual background in Weber, गला बैठ गया बेटा, कुछ ज्यादा आवर्स हो रहा है, कोई नहीं. This historical and intellectual background would also be involving the methodological concerns in a Weberian sociology, through which we will be trying to understand the different kind of themes which are mentioned in your syllabus, and through which these methodological concerns will also be able to understand the needed disposition of the questions of the previous years. Now, the first dimension that will be coming out in a historical one is the beginning of a new theoretical methodological concern in sociology that is interpretive movement or interpretive sociology. Do you remember when we started talking about the positivism? Unit 2. And even when we picked up the epistemological dimension of the qualitative methods, we talked about positivism and interpretivism. And I gave you the certain points in terms of subjectivity, the meaning, reflexivity, to understand the interpretative or interpretive dimension, interpretive analysis in sociology. And this interpretive movement will begin a certain kind of novelty, certain kind of newness in the sociological tradition, which will also be making Weber to have non-positivist stand in sociology. But I ask you to recall back the line that the debate in sociology is not whether sociology is a science or not. The debate surrounds in terms of the applicability of the methods of the natural science. The way the positivists have basically vouched for, and in which the non-positivist interpretations or perspectives are to be analyzed by you. Then the most important dimension has to be looked at, that is background of mind the word way, German historicism. When I say the background of German historicism, it basically emerged in a response to methodological debate between natural versus social sciences. Somehow or other, the neo-Kantian perspective, idealism would be coming out. And this debate emerged between the historians and the rising positivists, that what should be the methodological concern in natural and social sciences. Precisely sociology. Wilhelm Dilthey, Wilhelm Windelband, Heinrich Rickert, and being a part and response to this German historicism, Weber will be taking a middle path in terms of historical and ideographic approach. Thus, in the second paper, you find about the question in terms of nomothetic versus ideographic. Here, in this German historicism, Windelband will be talking about that nomothetic is a basically search of the generalizing law, generalized law. Ideographic is basically concerned with the individualizing laws. Wilhelm Dilthey would be talking about that how the subject matter of social science is different from that of natural science, and within which we will be finding about the emphasis on first-hand method. Rickert will be talking about the scientific nature, that certainly from the methods of natural science, social phenomena could be studied. But in that case, the investigator would only be knowing one aspect of the reality, not the complete reality. And with this impact of German historicism, somewhere the stand of Weber will become clear, his methodological concerns will become clear, in which historical and ideographic approach, just opposite of the nomothetic, was taken by Weber. Here we would also be able to Compare Durkheim's methodology and a Weberian methodology. I always have said that when looking at the concerns of methodology, Durkheimian methodology is basically for the sociology as a subject, as a discipline. Weberian methodology is for the practitioners of the discipline. So some sort of elasticity would be there. And thus, very early, you will be finding about the certain questions, and very good questions in your PYQs. That why does Weber think that the way the predecessors have tried to explain the social phenomena on the methods of natural science have committed a blunder? In this respect, how Weber initiates the interpretative understanding. Or they have asked what is interpretative sociology and why does Weber think? You need to remember that Weber has freed sociology from every sort of determinism. And in this very perspective, he would not only be standing opposite to positivism, his methodological concerns will be opposite to Durkheim. He would also become critical of the methodological contour of Karl Marx. And when we are talking about the positivism and non-positivism, I said, the kind of interpretive understanding what Weber initiates, almost every perspective in sociology, whose nature is micro, seems to be influenced by Weberian dimension. So either you are talking about the symbolic instructionism, or you are talking about phenomenology, or you talk about ethnomethodology, or you talk about dramaturgy, all somehow or other seems to be influenced by the Weberian perspective. It means Weber seems to be a very vibrant scholar in the contemporary sociologist. His ideas, his concepts, his methodological issues, it is so wide that sometimes it becomes too difficult to analyze Weber in a unified manner. And hence I am saying that every theme which is there in a Weber, either that be social action, you are talking about power, authority, bureaucracy, legitimacy, or you are talking about Protestant ethics and the spirit of capitalism, you need to begin with the methodological concerns of Weber. And once you have done it, then D, relation of science to value. And the moment you talk about the Weberian relation of science to value, not merely of the social science, but also of the natural science. That whenever an investigator picks up any phenomena to study, consciously, unconsciously, he does it from a certain point of reference. Thus, the concept which will become important, which from where the questions are coming, is called value relevance. And Weber denies that there is a possibility of objective study of social phenomena. It means in terms of value-free, problem of objectivity, Weberian stance seems to be something different from that of the positivist, particularly Durkheim. But once you talk about the value relevance, you also need to talk about it, another concept of Weber, that is called value neutrality. And why? Weber says that the sociology is value relevant. It needs to be value neutral, because science is all about facts, not of values. Now look at the problem of objectivity. Those who are talking about objectivity Directly, it is as it is. And the way Weber is talking about the perspective of objectivity would be different in terms of positivist and non-positivist dimension. Objective analysis is there in a Weber. But by recognizing the value, by reflecting the dimensions of value neutrality, to address the problem of relation of science to value and the problem of value neutrality, Weber proposes the method that is called concept of ideal type. आप शुरू ही करते हैं, मेंटल कंस्ट्रक्ट है, इलास्टिसिटी है. By why ideal type is required? Why one-sided accentuation of facts in terms of typification, abstraction is basically being talked about by Weber? How with this abstraction the empiricism has to be approached? And that's why once again I'm saying, to address the problem of relation of science to value and a problem of value neutrality, Weber picks up the concept of or the method of ideal type. Ideal type is also a refutal of the claim of science that it can understand any phenomena with its infinite plurality. Ideal type is also a refutal of this idea of science that any concept could do justice with the infinite entirety of the phenomena. Why? Because Weber says that science has two features. Science is abstract and science is incomplete. So the true objective study would not become possible. So it is abstract, it is incomplete. There is a chaos of facts. So whenever any sociologists, historians will pick up any phenomena to study, consciously, unconsciously, they will do it from the certain point of reference. And that way relation of science to value, value neutrality, ideal type, these all would be coming out. And the concerns of objectivity in Weber in methodology, which will also become the part of the questions of PYQs of yours in Unit 2. Now, I have a one firm belief that I pick up certain questions of PYQs, discuss it, and I'll let you know. That will not solve the problem. You just look at, watch the videos, note down the points, improve yourself, get the groove of the scholars, and then just when you have done it, what I told you, just go through the PYQs, note down the certain points. If the problem persists, you have my number, just give me a call, so that I can connect with you and I can let you know that where the things have gone wrong and what is required. This is broadly the historical, intellectual background, the methodological concerns in a Weber. And now let's, in a brief, try to understand one by one. Before I proceed, giving you the certain different accounts of Weberian sociology, every question of Weber must involve the two methods, that is first hand and ideal type. And more precisely, when you say first hand, explanatory first hand would be there, not the direct observational first hand. And along with the first hand, you also need to talk about it, another method in all the questions. There is ideal type. This very concept of ideal type would be there used in a social stratification as well. When we will be talking about the Trinity model of class, status and party. So like most of the works of Weber, even the analysis of class, which we will be talking about next, after the thinkers have been done in social stratification, would involve the formulation of an ideal type. So you're looking at the PYQ, that what is the significance and weakness of ideal type. And it's a very painful, sometimes I find in a test, people write it. What is an ideal cannot be type, what is a type cannot be an ideal. No. Ideal has not to be viewed terminologically. It has to be viewed figuratively. Ideal type could be of a brothel, ideal type could be of a chapel. You need to bring the sociological substance, not only in understanding, but also in writing. The way we will understand, you will write it. And there is no easy way. But it is also not tough. It's an easy subject. Provided you should be ready to know the groove, go behind the lines. And you also need to remember that the questions which have come in terms of the social action, all right, they will also be involving first and an ideal type. The comparative analysis, types of actions. And this very sociology of social action of Weber emerged by having the influence of German historicism. Just I'll be talking about that one. Weberian ideal type is also an alternative to Durkheim's comparative method, which I have talked about, and a Marxian dialectical method, which was a means to generalize. So through the ideal type, not only the comparison but generalization could also be done. Now with this background, brief background of how to approach Weber, I told you that when we are looking at Max Weber, a German scholar, historian, political analyst and sociologist, is counted among the sociologists or in sociological tradition as one of the founding fathers of sociology, and more precisely the modern sociology. So his ideas remain to be a treasure, not only for the sociological tradition but also in the history of the social thinking. Cutting across the lines of the social sciences, as we had studied Marx, or as the Marx is being studied in a political science, in sociology, in philosophy and others. This very line of social science is also influenced with the Weberian perspective. His analytical thinking, scholarly achievement, scientific perspective, and extensive research still influence the contemporary sociology and the practitioners of sociology. However, we also need to understand that his ideas of society and the social phenomena makes Weber stand completely opposite not only to his contemporary but also take a very different stand from his predecessors. And in this very perspective, he initiates a methodological stand opposite to positivism by focusing on interpretive understanding of social action. Let me make one line which I will be making later on as well. That the moment you start looking at Weber, you find about the social action is the subject matter of sociology. As you're talking about Durkheim, the social fact. You need to remember one line. That picking social action as the subject matter of sociology, Weber initiates a new dimension of analysis in sociological tradition. And he acknowledges that the kind of sociology which I am interested in is something different. And social action should not be taken as the only legitimate area of inquiry in sociology. There could be some other areas as well. It means when you make the line that's to Weber, social action is the subject matter of sociology, you need to understand the base. And with this, picking up social action as the legitimate area of inquiry, subject matter of sociology, Weber basically moves away from the positivist stand, the sui generis reality of the time, and broadly from the positivist. The subjective meaning what the actor has attributed to his action should be the prime concern that has to be interpreted, which may sometimes require empathy. That subjectivity, the meaning. And hence Weber says that the unit of study in sociology should not be an abstract society. Now, a moment you say the abstract society, then you are talking about somewhere bringing about this sui generis reality, independent entity existing away from the individual. So, the unit of sociology should not be abstract society. Rather, the unit of study should be real flesh and blood social individual. I repeat, the real flesh and blood social individual. And thus, Weber would disapprove abstract theorizing. And once he disapproves abstract theorizing, Weber will incline towards empiricism. And he also does not believe that society follows a general law of development. And unlike Marx, Weber does not focus on non-existence laws containing the fate of mankind, in which you will be finding about that how Weberian understanding of socialism and Marxian understanding would be different from one another. How Weberian analysis of bureaucracy would be different that of the Karl Marx. And thus, no abstract theorizing, no non-existence laws containing the fate of mankind, no journalistic historical development, what Marx has done, and neither the sui generis reality. Society to Weber is a network of social relationship. And if it is a network of social relationship, it is created by the social individuals who believe themselves to be meaningfully oriented towards one another. And thus Weber argues that sociology is a science that attempts to interpret social action to arrive at the causal connection, its course and its effect. Therefore, when the people are meaningfully attached to, attributed or related to one another, then the subjective meaning attributed by the actor and the interpretation of that meaning should be prime concern in sociology. Sociological methods are to establish a balance between subjective meaning attributed by the actor and the causal connectivity. Why? Without which science of society would not be real. You cannot completely ignore the subjectivity. So if you need to make a balance between the subjective meaning attributed by the actor behind his action and also the causal connectivity, without which the real science of society would not emerge. And in this context, Weberian sociology of social action develops mostly in conjunction with the debate between historians and rising positivists in Germany, popularly called German historicism, which particularly emerged on the question of a specificity of methodology between natural and social science, and also the possibility of value-free sociology, what the positivism has initiated. And thus, let me give you the certain quotations of the certain works. In this context of German historicism, Wilhelm Dilthey argues that cultural science studies acting individual with ideas and intentions, thereby requiring a special method of understanding that is called first hand. Whereas natural science studies soulless thing, so consequently they do not require to know the object they study. Similarly, Wilhelm Windelband argues that natural science strives to find universal law, hence its nature is nomothetic, whereas cultural science are individualizing in nature, idiographic. Heinrich Rickert, part of the German historicism, he argues that it is the subject matter that distinguishes science. When we are talking about natural science and social science, it is the subject matter that will distinguish them. Cultural phenomena can be studied by the methods of natural science, for sure. No, he is not saying that you cannot study the cultural phenomena through the methods of natural science. The positivists have done it. So cultural phenomena could be studied with the methods of natural science for sure. But in that case, Heinrich Rickert is saying, investigator would arrive only at a specific nature of that phenomena. Weber, being a part and witness to this debate, insists that sociology involves idiographic and historical approach in its attempt to grasp the cultural reality. In an attempt to grasp cultural reality. Right? To approximate the reality. A total objective reality in social science would not become possible. Right? Weber does want sociology to be, 1 minute. Systematic, but does not believe that sociology to be systematic, sociology to be scientific, needs the methods of natural science. To Weber, sociology is a science on the basis of its own merit. I quote several times, which I have done it, that sociology is a science on the basis of its own merit, for which sociology does not need to be positivistic in orientation. And even if sociology is not positivistic, objectivity does not prelude it. So the concerns of objectivity is there in a Weber, but differently from that of the positivists. Sociology is the subjective understanding of objective reality. And if sociology is the subjective understanding of objective reality, then to understand that objectivity, subjectivity cannot be ignored. Human beings are not machines. They do not act in a mechanical manner. They have intentions, they have motives. You need to understand that. You need now to know that subjective meaning that has been attributed by the actor. You need to interpret that meaning. For which methods of natural science is not appropriate. And even if you are not talking about, as the positivists are claim, that as the natural scientists are discovering the natural laws to understand the natural phenomena, so is the responsibility of the sociologists to discover the social phenomena. So social facts, social laws are to be found, established to understand the social phenomena scientifically. And that establishment of social laws akin to the natural laws, what the positivists are harping, what positivists are thriving, Weber says no. Sociology to become science does not need to be positivistic, does not need to apply the methods of natural science. Now, are you able to go through that PYQ? that what is interpretative sociology and why Weber thinks that the predecessors who have tried to understand social phenomena on the basis of the methods of natural science have committed a mistake. I hope you would be able to understand this PYQ and the base of this PYQ. What is the requirement of that PYQ? So sociology to become science does not need to be positivistic. And even if we are not positivistic, even if sociology is not positivistic, objectivity does not prelude us. And in this very perspective, once again I am saying, debate is not there in terms of whether sociology is a science or not. Time and again, don't waste your time in going to this debate, which the most of the books contain. They have been written for the neat disposition of the university's syllabus. No one is denying that sociology is not science. The debate is what methods should sociology attain scientific status? Through the methods of natural science or through its own specific methods? And here Weber is coming, not talking about the universalizing law like the natural science that is nomothetic. It's basically talking about individualizing laws in terms of ideographic and historical. Now, if you look at Durkheim, what I said, that sociology is not in condition to go for the direct experimentation. And there in Durkheim, we talked about the comparative method. Now, just opposite. Weber is saying something different. Weber says that sociologists are in advantage condition than the natural scientists. And how that advantage? Because the natural scientists does not need to understand the subject matter, the unit of their analysis. So we are in the privileged condition. We first need to understand what we are studying. And thus, Weber makes Verstehen, which in a German language means understanding, an intrinsic part of the sociological inquiry. In a science, natural science, search of law is an end in itself. No. But it is not the case in sociology, Weber argues. Rather, the aim of sociological law is to understand social behavior clearly in an attempt to explain its causally. And once you have explained it by taking the meaning of the actor, Weber says it could be checked by the others. And thus Weber is now initiating interpretive movement in sociological tradition in his attempt to analyze individual and his action. He argues that sociologists are required to engage themselves in the process of meaning because the action to which actor attributes subjective meaning is the subject matter of sociology. However, Weber also writes that sociology by no means is confined only to the study of social action. But the kind of sociology what Weber wants to develop may be decisive for a status of sociology as a science. ये समझना है बेटा. What we have talked about, that if you talk about the subjective meaning, if we talk about the individual, scientific status of sociology would not become possible. Weber is saying, no. Even if you have taken the subjective meaning what the actor is attributed behind his action, it would be decisive to make sociology attain the status of a science. And the sociologists needed to interpret that social action. And I just said, Weber says, that if you are looking in the natural science and social science, at the level of abstraction, ideal type pe taraf jana hai beta, at the level of abstraction, both the sciences, natural and social, are similar. Science reflects two characteristics: abstraction and incompleteness. And thus, here now Weber picks up the relation of science to value, for which we are talking about the value relevance, value neutrality. Now once you look at, I have made the sequence of your understanding, a structured understanding. Now if there is a relation of science to values, so Weber is arguing that social and historical phenomena consist of many actions and interests. Thus, whenever the investigator tries to study any social or historical phenomena, he is confronted with the chaos of facts. Thus, investigator studies from a certain point of reference. The moment you say this investigator studies from a certain point of reference, the concept of value relevance has come out. The statement of the problem and the selection of the facts which investigator makes are consciously or unconsciously related to cultural values. So investigator studies what he wants to study or what he considers important to study. Hence Weber argues, mind the line beta, hence Weber argues that there can never be objective scientific analysis of cultural life, because investigator would always ascribe the cultural significance to that phenomena which reflects the perspective of value relevance. However, Weber is saying that if sociology is value relevant, it has also to be value neutral. Why? Because science is all about facts, not of values. There has always been a difference between normative knowledge and empirical knowledge. Normative knowledge, what ought to be. Empirical knowledge, what is. So Weber is saying there has always been a difference between what ought to be, what is. Sociology should not make any moral judgment, should not derive any ethical imperative from the study of cultural value. Sociology should not judge the phenomena to be good or bad, because by doing so, the investigator would involve moral judgment. Each person has his own values and choice of value is subjective. Whenever the investigator picks up any social historical phenomena to study, all right, it is there with the cultural significance. So there is related to consciously, unconsciously is related to the cultural values. Now here, that each person has his own value and the choice of value is subjective. Therefore, science should not or could not focus on value, rather should limit itself to analyze the effects of various actions, but not what action should be chosen. It means sociologists are not in a condition to pronounce on any value, neither to assert their values on the expense of other. Right? They need to be value neutral. And here, Weber is now basically talking about the historical and ideographic approach in sociology. And that's why I said that sociology is the subjective understanding of the objective reality. And for this subjective understanding, when Weber has picked up the social action as the subject matter of sociology, then the meaning what the actor has attributed requires first hand, which just I said, one of the prominent method or making first hand an intrinsic part of the sociological inquiry, the contribution of Weber, though Weber has recognized the contribution of George Simmel in making first hand an intrinsic part of sociological inquiry. But here, in a Weberian methodology, apart from this value relevance, value neutrality, the social action, the subjective meaning attributed by the action, for which the first hand as a method is important. It means first and as a method is a key term in a Weberian sociology to interpret social action. Fasten is a German word meaning understanding. Here Weber recognizes the contribution of another German scholar, George Simmel, in making Fasten an integral part of sociological analysis. Weber, by recognizing the contribution of Simmel, argues or agrees with this fact that meaning emerges. ठीक है, आपको understanding करना है, you need to understand the meaning. But when you say meaning attributed by the actor, mind few lines better, and don't forget, from where the meaning is coming. So meaning does not stem from the configuration of reality outside mind. Yeah, see, journalist is gone. That meaning does not arise from the configuration of objects external to the actor or external to the human subject. I told you that Weber was critical of the sui generis reality. And Weber says meaning also does not come from the thought process of autonomous individual. अकेला है, नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है. Mind the line beta. Rather, meaning is constituted with social interactional processes. So meaning is not from the configuration of object which is external to the human subject, not from the autonomous action. Rather, the meaning has to be viewed in a social interactional process. Weber considered Western to be necessary instrument not only to understand the meaning attributed by the actor, but also to interpret the causes. That is how the actor attributes meaning to his action, since actor does not act in a mechanical manner. Rather, actor works according to the motivations which requires the perspective of empathy. Through Fasten, Weber provides elasticity to sociological analysis, which Durkheim was unable to do. With his emphasis on universal determinism, what Durkheim has basically focused on. That's why I said the Durkheim's methodology is for the sociology as a discipline. Weberian methodology is for the practitioners of the discipline. Fasten could broadly be divided into two types. That is the direct observational Fasten, which is obtained by or either by this fact that one knows the rule or one might have gone through the similar process in his or her life. Most of the day-to-day activities, Weber says, or everyday events are obtained through direct observational Fasten. And the second type is explanatory Fasten, which is concerned with knowing the motives of the actor. What is the motive of the actor's action? It is precisely the intention of the actor based on a rationally founded explanatory Fasten. I repeat, a rationally founded explanatory Fasten. Here, rationality stems from actor's perspective. Legal rational authority भी जब बोलेंगे, तो rationality has to be viewed from the actor's perspective. And once Weber has talked about the Fasten, Weber now moves in his methodological concern to the different path by arguing that in general, sociologists must be able to obtain highly complex action involving the abstraction of or articulation of many discrete actions. In other words, sociologists must typify meaningful actions in terms of hypothetical cultural values, guiding and constructing large-scale interactional process. This is the base through which Weber will be moving toward another method, the most significant in a Weberian sociology, that is called ideal type. For example, suppose if I ask you about university and what are the actions you consider important in university, you would basically be picking up the certain kind of things and through which you will be trying to approach the university or the actions which he considered to be important taking place in university. The way you have tried to approach this one, Weber calls it abstract typification or ideal type. It means the same phenomena may be studied by the different scholars, sociologists, could have a different ideal type. No one is in a condition to say that whatever he has talked about is the complete entirety. That way the comparison could be done. An ideal type would basically be helping you approximate the reality. Objective reality तो पहले ही बता दिया गया बेटा. Ideal type is founded by one-sided accentuation of one or more points of views and synthesizing diffused, discrete, more or less present, seldomly absent, concrete phenomena which are arranged according to one-sided emphasized views into a unified construct. इतना definition you would not be able to mug up. रटना नहीं है, बस एक word याद रखना है, one-sided accentuation of facts, which could be discrete, which could be diffused, which could be present, which could be absent. Whenever any sociologist picks up any sociological or socio-cultural phenomena or historical phenomena, consciously, unconsciously, he or she will approach it through one-sided typification necessary to approximate social or historical reality, which we are talking about as abstract typification or ideal type. Ideal type is also an attempt to address the problem of relation of science to value, I had told you, and the problem of value neutrality. Ideal type is also based on the principle that no scientific system is ever capable of reproducing entire reality. And also, no conceptual apparatus can ever do entire justice to the infinite plurality of that phenomena, since it involves abstraction and selection. To overcome the dilemma between this abstraction and selection, भाई कार्बन है, कार्बन का 14, 12, 10 सब, अभी कार्बन की प्रॉपर्टीज को जानना है, whatever I picked up, and suppose if I picked up carbon 14, then I have the certain kind of dilemma that whatever I have done it, whatever I have picked up, will it be able to do entire justice? So there is a problem of abstraction and dilemma. To overcome this dilemma of abstraction and selection, Weber is proposing ideal type. Or the sociologist will construct an ideal type. It can be argued that ideal type is a mental construct. अब यहां से आओ बेटा, पहले उसका sociological dimension, relation of science to value, value neutrality, science, scientific, no complete infinite plurality, dilemma of abstraction and selection, and then come that ideal type is a mental construct, a cognitive map to approximate the reality. It may not be found empirically. And we also need to remember that ideal type has nothing to do with the technological meaning, terminological meaning, and has no link with the moral ideas. Ideal को बहुत बार moral नहीं, वो terminological sense में इसको नहीं देखना है. Thus, ideal type could be of a brothel and ideal type could be of a chapel, just I said it. It is not the description of everything. Rather, it is a description of only important aspects of an action in pure form. It is rational blueprint to study the patterns of social action. आपसे पूछता है ना कि what are the strength? ये strength है बेटा. It also helps to display the value committed. It is not an end in itself. Rather, it is a means to analyze any concrete historical phenomena or problem. Since it is constituted in a one-sided accentuation of the investigator, there can be possibility of formulation of different ideal types of the same socio-historical phenomena by the different investigators. It helps comparative analysis and it would also become the base to provide generalization. Hence, I had told you that a Weberian ideal type is basically an alternative to the Marx dialectical method and Durkheim's comparative method. This is the methodological concern. अब आसान हो गया बेटा. अब either you are talking about social action, you only need to know the types. If you are talking about legitimacy, social action से शुरू करेंगे बेटा. बहुत गलती करते हैं हम लोग पावर और ब्यूरोक्रेसी और अथॉरिटी को जानने में. If the subject matter of sociology is a social action, that why does actor consider something to be legitimate? It has to be approached through the meaning of the actor. So if there are the 4 types of action, 4 forms of legitimacy will be coming out. When you are using this legitimacy into the organizational form, then he will include a factional and what rational action, value relational action into one and terming it to be charismatic. कैसे नहीं number मिलेगा मेरे भाई? When people say that we do not get marks, you are not writing. What is the statement? What is the understanding of the thinkers? आप केवल रट रहे हैं कि इसने एक क्रिटिसिज्म किया, इसने एक क्रिटिसिज्म. अरे गुनर मिडल से लेके बीना मजुमदार तक का क्रिटिसिज्म कर लेंगे हम. पार्सन से लेकर सबका क्रिटिसिज्म कर लेंगे. समझ तो लो पहले मेरे भाई. Your self understanding, your self criticism has to be talked about. और यहीं से अब आसान हो गया बेटा. मैंने बोला ना सोशल एक्शन जानना है. सोशल एक्शन वुड बी देयर इन लेजिटिमेसी, इन पावर एंड अथॉरिटी. Social action would be there in terms of legal and rational, in which the bureaucracy will be coming out. So traditional authority, charismatic authority, legal rational authority. And same social action, more precisely, what rational and what rational would become the base of the sociology of religion of Weber in terms of Protestant ethics. वो value है, वो what rational है बेटा. And the spirit of capitalism is a what rational, goal orientational है. This clarity of thought is required. All right. Now from here, once you have become comfortable and confident with the methodology, then we are not talking about the certain themes. And this will be very brief because now you know the methodological concerns, the historical intellectual background of Weberian sociology and its emergence. Weberian sociology is basically a science of social action, which emerged as a part and response in the debate pertaining to the methodological concern in natural and social science, that is in terms of German historicism. Weber being a part and witness to this debate of German historicism, he viewed sociology from historical and ideographic perspective. And in this way, he became critical of the positivists. Weber takes a middle path. For example, if Auguste Comte believed that methods of natural science be applied to the analysis of social phenomena, then George Simmel emphasized that social science requires a different methodology. Weber, by taking note of this debate, initiates interpretative understanding of social action and thereby initiating the non-positivist stand. Mind the line. Despite taking a different methods, Weberian sociology is scientific in nature. So they had asked the questions in the PYQs. Are the non-positivists scientific in nature? Yes, they are scientific in nature. But not the way we understand science. Not the way the positivists have understood sociology to be a science. You take this stand, your answers would be there. And I said that Weber, I quote, time and again I have quoted, sociology to become science does not need to be positivistic. And even if it is not positivistic, objectivity does not prelude us. Weber argues the type of social action which we the sociologists are interested in is an empirical science of concrete reality. And our aim as a sociologist is to understand the uniqueness of subjective reality. Thus, the reflective nature of human, which we also attribute, the relationship between actors' action and cultural significance, requires different methodology, within which Weber emphasizes on first-hand method, which we have just know, All right. And first hand method would also be providing you the causal connectivity, will become the base of causality. Action is social. दो लाइन को सुनना बेटा ठीक से. Weber says action is social insofar as it attaches subjective meaning of the actor. And action is social insofar as subjective meaning of an actor takes account of the behavior of others and thus orients its action to that course. The social action to which actor attributes subjective meaning is of utmost significance. And it could be determined causally. How? By the behavior of others, because that is basically making him to orient into this course. If it is not so, then it should not be considered to be the social action. It is not social in nature. Social action may include failure to act, as well as passive acquiescence, and could also involve past, present, and future. Here, others, oriented towards the other behavior of others. Others could be specific individuals known to the actor, and could also be the infinite plurality of actors who are unknown to the actor. Traditional action की तरफ समझेंगे इसको. But all along, what concerns sociologists is the meaningful action, what sociologists are required to interpret. And on the basis of this uniformity of social action could be understood. Prior to Weber, Wilfredo Pareto, Wilfredo Wilfredo Pareto, 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 distinguished between logical and non-logical action, which though have its glimpse in Weberian sociology, but Weber's departure from the Pareto is the actor's rationality, not the observer's rationality. And Weber identifies 4 types of action. I told you, TAOs: traditional action, affectional action, what rational, and a joac rational one. Eternal study, that is there in terms of traditional, we will be much more easier. I am not going into detail because that is too easy to understand. Traditional action by virtue of custom and beliefs that have become habitual, that actors act according to ingrained habituation. Mostly the action is automatic response to the habitual stimuli, guiding behavior in the course that has been repeatedly followed. It occurs when means and ends are fixed by customs. Customs, traditions, and end of actions are taken for granted, thereby appearing natural to the actor. Actor thus is unable to comprehend the possibility of alternatives. Here the idea that this is the way things have been done is a vital in a traditional action, for which actor does not need to imagine any immediate emotion, values, or a goal, the other types of action. Rather, the actor obeys the tradition that becomes part of his action. Most of the everyday actions, according to Weber, are of this type. The second action is affectional action, which is derived immediately from the state of mind, relates means to end, so that action becomes emotional and impulsive. A air passenger, when it goes to the air hostess, she gives a very stern look. Or in a cricket match, when a batsman is out and has thrown his bat. Or in a soccer match, when a player has shown his punch toward the players of another match, are the certain examples of affectional action. It is an end in itself. Apart from this, the 2 actions which are the most important one in Weber is a what rational or value orientational, in which Weber argues that the rational calculation of the best way to obtain a glorious and meaningful death would be what rational action. The actor is guided by the value rationality, makes commitment to the certain subjective goals, and adopt means considered effective in attaining the end. The captain of the sinking ship prefers to die rather than abandoning the ship is a very typical example of what rational or value rational action. The actor knows, consciously knows, that abandoning would mean loss of honor or prestige. Thus, the value attached to the honor and not the consequence becomes important. Since value rationality is measured in terms of subjective meaning, it is difficult to compare actions of two actors. Mind the line, beta. Most of the religious or ethical actions belong to what rational action? And the fourth action is joak rational, goal orientational, goal rational, which entails a complete plurality of means and ends. For example, you devising a strategy to crack UPSC, or a general of an army devising a strategy to win a war, or a broker in the stock market calculating to earn more profit. All right? So it is a means to an end. What rational is an end in itself. It is a means to an end. Precisely the consequence is more important one. When we have talked about this one, then you go to the comparison between these four. अगर ऐसा क्वेश्चन होता है कंपैरेटिव वाला में तो the first two, traditional and affectional, are non-rational actions. Joak rational and what rational are rational actions. But you need to remember that how do we know about these four, traditional, affectional, what rational and joak rational? Because the actor has attributed meaning. First 10 is there. And they are to be put in abstraction, in a pure type. Hence the ideal type would be there. This would be the basic analysis of the social action. And a similar perspective when you say that to Weber, the subject matter of sociology is the subjective understanding of the social action. Then why you forget about this line when you are analyzing the sociology of or Weberian sociology of legitimacy? I am giving something very different. I am giving from the Weberian perspective, not from this guide and social media kind of perspective. You need to understand, read the originals of the scholars. Weberian analysis of legitimacy is yet another contribution to sociological tradition, within which the concept of power and authority, and also his analysis of bureaucracy, will find its location. Weber considers social relation to be conflicting relationship and power to be the very determinant of social life. However, he considers it to be complicated issues. Mind the lines better. I am now reading Weber, quoting Weber. When Weber considered it to be a complicated issues, since power cannot be equated only with economic determination, nor it is merely derived from the control of the government, neither has implicitly political instrument. Thus, it requires multi-dimensional perspective, which Weber, like other works of his, approaches through ideal type. To Weber, power is the probability or chance of an actor within the social relationship or social action relationship who will be in a position to carry out his or her will despite the resistance of others. Power is a chance or probability of an actor or actors. Can I ask you that when you say about the actors, can you talk about the two authority that is called traditional and charismatic? And a chance or probability of actors. Can the same line or same understanding of yours in power be related to the legal rational one, impersonal power? So it is a chance or a probability of man or number of men in a social relationship to carry out their will despite the resistance of others. तो थोड़ा कोर्सन भी है उसमें, रेजिस्टेंस भी है. और यहां से सेकेंड पेपर और द यूनिट 2 पर्टिकुलरली यूनिट 7 में चल जाना है. क्वेश्चंस है बेटा दर पार्सन्स एंड वेबर के कंपैरिजन में पावर का एनालिसिस है. दैट वेबरियन कंसेप्ट of power is rooted in a social relationship, and it is a constant sum, zero sum constant of power. Amount is not changing. Persons may change. So hence Weberian understanding or Weberian interpretation of power is a constant or zero sum concept to be viewed in the social relationship. Weber though considers power to be legal and illegal, but he keeps illegal power outside the periphery of sociological analysis. Why? Because they are transitory in nature. Once the illegal power has been taken out of the equation, since they are transitory in nature, are not falling within the sociological analysis, what is left is the legal power, and that legal power, socially sanctioned power, is authority. Thus, in a Weberian sociology, analysis of legal power becomes significant, which could be understood as an authority. Conceptually, authority is the probability that a command with a specific content will be obeyed by a given group of people. And when this command is considered valid, the concept of legitimacy would come out. A command with a specific content will be obeyed by a given group of people. And when this command becomes valid or is considered valid, then it would be called legitimate. गौर करना बेटा, थोड़ा सा नया एनालिसिस होगा. Weber considers many of the actions that actors performs are part of organization or institutional order. Thus, actions, especially social action, involving social relationship, may be guided by the belief in the existence of legitimate order. Weber here raises the question that why actor considers something as legitimate. First है ना बेटा, social actions है. So if there are 4 types of social action, your analysis of why an actor considers something to be legitimate should have 4 explanations. Which Weber attributes to the types of social action and proposes 4 ideal type of legitimacy. That is, the actor may consider something legitimate due to tradition, emotion, sanctity of value, or means to an end. So that is a traditional, affectional, what rational, and joac rational. But when Weber moves toward the analysis of various ideal types of organization, he reduces the number from 4 to 3, as he believes, mind the line, as he believes that merely on the basis of emotion and value, organizations will not run. And thus, emotion and values are combined together in terms of charismatic authority. So now the authority are 3. Traditional authority, charismatic authority, and legal rational authority. Explain it from there. It involves the traditional authority, involves the sanctity of immemorial traditions and beliefs. It is based on the customs, traditions that justify and even sanctify the position of a ruler or leader. और charismatic में फिर आपको क्या करना है? That you need to understand it in terms of that, like traditional authority, it is also personal, based on timely quality of individual, ruler or leader. By virtue of it, it is considered extraordinary. Charisma is a grace of God or compelling charm that can inspire devotion in others. So the charismatic leader may incite the devotion in others. ठीक है ना? And in a charismatic authority, you also need to talk about routinization of charisma or charismatic movement. So charismatic movement and its routinization, that is, the routinization of charisma is either at the time of leader or after his death, when the followers turns his ideas into a dogma to lead a normal life. It is routinized, which with the passage of time may become traditional. जितने भी कल्ट वाले रिलीजन सब ऑर्गेनाइज हुए, गांधीयन थॉट, ये सब रूटिनाइजेशन ऑफ करिश्मा के एग्जांपल है. और वहीं से फिर आपको लीगल रैशनल लेना है बेटा. That Weberian legal rational authority or dominance can be found in most of the modern corporations, organization that emphasizes rational, purposeful action. joac rational वाला. और यहीं से आपको ब्यूरोक्रेसी लेना है बेटा. So the moment in economy and society you will be turning toward the organization, I just said it. So the three types of authority: traditional, charismatic, legal, rational. And then you need to talk about the bureaucratic organization, the bureaucracy. Weber, on the basis of value neutrality, consistent use of abstract rules, personals being subjected to laws, obedience being consistent to membership, obeying the person in authority, not the person per se, highlight the pure form, ideal type of a bureaucracy, though he was aware that it may not be found empirically. It is a gender neutral, but may not happen so in practice. The purest form of this domination is found in the formal organization, that is bureaucracy. अब यहाँ से ideal type of bureaucracy, pure form of bureaucracy ले लीजिए. So Weber does not favor the Marxian perspective that bureaucrats are having the parasitic role in a capitalism. They are the parasites in the hands of capitalist bourgeois. Weber is not talking that one. Rather considers that functioning of modern state and modern economy received a new paradigm shift due to the bureaucracy. State and bureaucracy are intertwined. Weber strongly believes that a strong state requires a strong administration, a well-built bureaucracy. Same data will be used by you in terms of democratic elitism through bureaucracy. When you're talking about the unit 7, there is a political sociology. When I said bureaucracy is having an ideal type. So persons are free and subjected to obedience with regard to impersonal duties. Personals are organized into a strict hierarchy of official positions. Each position has its own well-defined sphere of competence. Hierarchy hai beta. An official holds the office by virtue of contract, that is in principle in accordance with the free selection on the basis of personal qualification, demonstrated through rational action by a test or confirmation of a diploma. An official is compensated with a fixed remuneration in accordance with hierarchical responsibility or prestige associated with that position. Office to the holder is the only main occupation. It is a career before him with a system of promotion on the basis of time of service, performance, or both. The official cannot own the means of administration and cannot appropriate this position. Officials are subjected to strict and systematic discipline and control while carrying out their duties. These are the certain structural dimensions within which Weberian bureaucracy could be picked up. While watching the video, knock down these 8 or 9 points. And look at, there are certain asking the informal form of bureaucracy, Peter Blau, tax department in America. Now, Weber argues that bureaucracy in modern times is largely constructed, works in system of selection through an open and competitive examination. Obedience is fundamental aspect. The officials obey the higher authority and law. And thus Weber provides the example in terms of corporations, church, political parties. अब थोड़ा सा पेपर 4 की तरफ भी ले जा रहे हैं, यहां से कुछ क्वेश्चन बना है आपको 2016-17 मुझको भी समझने. Weber says more the bureaucracy is dehumanized, more completely it succeeds from eliminating from official business love, hatred, and all other purely emotional and personal elements that many times may escape rational calculus. The more the bureaucracy is dehumanized, human emotions, values have no place. That's why EI, when you're reading the paper 4, would be post-Weberian phenomena. The bureaucratic form in the modern times has led to the smooth functioning of modern state and planning from technical standpoint. Modern rationality, increasing rationality in the West, that has emerged out. But here Weber is also providing that how this rationality has emerged as an iron cage, threatening to dehumanize its own creator. In future, who would be trapped Who would be freed is unknown. So let me read Weber. Weber argues that modernity is not a totality in itself. Modern rationality has turned into an iron cage, creating a narrow and disjointed world of bureaucratic dumps, which itself reflects the paradox. Man, on the basis of increasing rationality, has created the world of commodity and administration, and thus it should be the man who should take the responsibility of his deeds. But it's irony that the man escapes the ethics of conviction by moving away from ethics of responsibility. The rational iron cage has trapped its own creator, has dehumanized him, yet the creator believes to have achieved the highest rate of development. तो आपको rational iron cage of bureaucracy का भी क्वेश्चन है बेटा, ये यहां से ले लेना वेबर के bureaucracy में. Alright? The world of modern rationality has turned into a monster, threatening to dehumanize its own creator. And thus, unlike Marx, Weber does not believe the future is a jump from realm of necessity to the realm of freedom. सेम सोशल एक्शन से हम लोगों ने लेजिटिमेसी पावर को देखा, उसी सोशल एक्शन से बेटा आपको वेबर का सोशियोलॉजी ऑफ रिलीजन भी देखना है. मेथोडोलॉजी फर्स्ट एंड आइडियल टाइप आपको याद रखना है. लेट मी गिव यू इन अ ब्रीफ इन 10-15 minutes. Weberian sociology of religion till date occupies a significant place in the sociological tradition, and more precisely in the sociology of comparative religion, in which Weber compared 6 great religions of the world. He had started his work on Islam but could not complete it. So usually it is 5, but since it is there, he had started Islam, so I am talking about the 6. That is Christianity, Confucianism, Hinduism, Judaism, Buddhism and Islam. Though he could not complete his work on Islam. And Weber has been severely criticized for this work, not only at his own time, but also later on. What separates West from the rest of the world? Why modern capitalism emerged in the West, which later on developed as a dominant force in human history? Weber attributes it to the increasing rationality in the West. And thus, Weber in his book, Protestant Ethics and the Spirit of Capitalism, demonstrates that how a specific and peculiar rationality tied to economic and technical condition of methods of production had originally been motivated by religious values. In other words, Weber focuses on the interconnectivity between or interdependence between ideational and material forces of history. But with the passage of time, religious values fall aside. Technical and economic standpoint became important force determining everyone's life. Yeah, there is a criticism of Marx and Durkheim as well. Weber is basically focusing on the interconnectivity between economic and realism. The way the kind of economic determinism in terms of infrastructure, superstructure. Remember in Marx, Weber said that when we are trying to compare, look at the relationship between the two variables. You should not consider one to be independent, another to be dependent. If economy can influence religion, then it is also subjected to be influenced by religion. And thus this interconnectivity between the economic and religion, Weber tries to analyze and provide a different kind of analysis. And you also need to understand that when Weber is speaking of the capitalism, Weber does not favor the idea of capitalism as being unique historical development as imagined by Marx. अब एक लाइन है बेटा, इसको याद रखना, आइडियल टाइप की तरफ पहुंच जाओ. Weber says that there is no such thing as capitalism. There has always been capitalisms. There is no such a thing as capitalism. There has always been capitalisms, which means every capitalist perspective presents peculiarities that are not encountered in other forms. Thus, the bourgeois capitalism of the West that has developed the types, forms, and directions has never been existed anywhere. And thus, even in the analysis of capitalism, in a Weberian sociology, we will be finding about the formation of ideal type to analyze capitalism. तो आपको क्वेश्चन आता है हाउ वेबर एंड मार्क्स इन कैपिटलिज्म, यहां से लाना, देयर इज नो सच थिंग एज कैपिटलिज्म, आइडियल टाइप की तरफ से देना बेटा, ट्रेडिशनल कैपिटलिज्म, बूटी कैपिटलिज्म, राइट, एंड देन मॉडर्न बुर्जुआ कैपिटलिज्म. अब मार्क्स का दूसरा क्रिटिसिज्म है बेटा, वेबर डज नॉट approach capitalists as the Marx has done it. To Weber, capitalist does not limit his appetite in gain in accordance with customs and traditions. Rather, he is driven by the desire to keep accumulating more so that a desire for production becomes unlimited. That what constitutes capitalism is not the idea of Marxian profit, but the idea of unlimited accumulation. Moreover, the prime concern of Weber has been the question that why capitalism emerged in the West cannot simply be answered by the Marxian perspective, since depicting only the accumulation of capital and emergence of free class of worker is not an adequate explanation. And here, why in the course of history some individuals turn their action to the accumulation of the capital requires first hand. Ideal type हो गया बेटा first hand. बार बार मैं बोल रहा हूं. That in every concept आसान है बेटा, कल एक बार पढ़ोगे आसान हो जाएगा, एक बार सुनोगे आसान हो जाएगा, और आपने पढ़ा भी होगा. मैंने केवल इसको रिफाइन कर दिया, मैंने केवल इसका बेस आपको चेंज कर दिया. And Weber picks up the connectivity between Protestant ethics and the spirit of capitalism, which he approaches with the formulation of ideal types. Ideal type of Protestant ethic and ideal types, two ideal types are better. Ideal type of Protestant ethic and ideal type of spirit of capitalism. Weber, with analysis of relationship between occupation and denominational affiliation, becomes able to demonstrate that capitalist entrepreneurs are disproportionately Protestant. He also tries to analyze the close relationship between occupational and denominational affiliation, not only in Europe, but also in the USA, between the membership in Puritans, Mennonites, Methodists, and other sects, and their successful business activities, for which Weber turns to the interpretation of meaning of lifestyle of these businessmen or these sects. Weber argued that Protestants he studied are genuinely religious, but in many ways profoundly unworldly. However, the anticipated consequence of their concept of duties and vocations led them to adapt to a lifestyle which uniquely is suited to the capitalist mode of production in the early stage. The Protestant reformers like Martin Luther, St. Calvin, by going against Catholicism and emphasize that human institutions would not displace an individual's personal relationship with God. They also become critical of prevalent corruption in a church and also disputed the claim that the hierarchy of pope, bishops, and priests would act as an intermediary between humans and a God for salvation in next world. In this context, Weber's first ideal type, Protestant ethics, is influenced by Calvin's doctrine of faith, surrounded by the theory of predestination. That is, God in his omnipotent existence has decided the destiny of everyone long before their birth. The people who believe in this belief, in this faith, the question whether they are sentenced to salvation or damnation led to the psychological uncertainty. Calvin's conception propounded the existence of an absolute transcendental God who created this world, whose rules are incomprehensible and inaccessible to the finite minds of humans. The all-powerful and mysterious God has predestined our faith in terms of salvation or damnation. that the man is required to work for the glory of God. The earthly things, human nature and flesh belongs to the order of sin, and death. Salvation could come to men only through the divine grace of God. Though Weber argues that all these things existed separately in the conception of other religion as well. But the combination in Calvinism is unique and original, resulting into the important consequences for which he will be criticized. And he will be severely criticized. The psychological uncertainty led to the inner loneliness in believers who had to work towards their faith by adopting an ascetic life or attitude towards life. Denied of physical luxury, the people should look for the signs, theory of sign, which will make them realize that they are the chosen child of God. Thus, by indulging into hard and laborious life, the believer could at least believe that they may be the chosen one. The second type, capitalism, what Weber constructed revolves around the teachings of Benjamin Franklin, Richard Dexter, George Bunyan. Weber discovers these scholars' disinterest on asceticism, hard work, and adoption of methodological lifestyle. Weber particularly picks up Benjamin Franklin, who in his advice to young tradesmen, the Poor Richard's Almanac, focused on certain injunctions that those who want success in trade, such as remember that time is money, credit is money, money can beget more money. The sound of hammer at 5 in the morning or 8 in the night, heard by the creditor, makes easy 6 months longer. That's a little announcement. दूसरा ideal type है. Alright. For Franklin, life was determined by making money as the ultimate purpose of life, though combined with a strict avoidance of every or all spontaneous enjoyment of life. ना पहला वाला मैंने बोला रिलीजियस है तो व्हाट रेशनल एक्शन है, दूसरा वाला गोल ओरिएंटेड है तो जग रेशनल है. अभी सुन लो, Weber argues that the content of these two ideal types is altogether different from one another, and they are based on a different assumption, but led to the similar actions. Protestant action is what rational, attempting to live up to the value of being saved and find the signs of salvation. Whereas the caprice action is a joke rational action, attempting to find an effective means to, or effective means to an end and multiplication of money. But combinedly they broke what Weber calls feudal spirit, containing irrational use of money and leading a luxurious life. But in order for the capitalist to rise above this luxurious life, required to give way to the accumulation of capital or giving way to the accumulation of capital, this luxurious life, extravaganza has to be given up, in which Protestant ethics played an important role. Alright? But once capitalism got institutionalized, it no longer required what rational action. Rather, joke rational action became prominent. However, to explain this transition, causal interpretation was required for the first capitalist to begin acting in ascetic life, in which Protestant ethics became significant. ये फर्स्ट ना हो गया बेटा, वो आइडियल टाइप हो गया. Alright. Up will of God was considered supreme. Work became a means of salvation. Orthodox perception of religion was rejected, but conformation to the law was preferred. One was required to earn money by working hard, but money was not to be spent on the luxurious making, extravaganza. One was required to live simplistic and ascetic life, not indulging in a self-indulgence. Rather, he need to look for the self-control, which consequently led to, mind the word, consequently led to accumulation of capital. In simple, working hard, earning money, rather than spending the money on the luxurious life, investing, and that way accumulation of rational calculus of capital, accumulation of capital became possible, giving way to the capitalism. यहाँ से ले लो बेटा दोनों आइडियल टाइप को. और अभी तक तो खोला नहीं है, they have not opened up, but that could be there in terms of the comparative analysis, particularly religion of India, religion of China. Weber is now talking about that why capitalism emerged in the West, not in other parts. Weber though recognizes the refinement of Indian civilization, but the belief in Maya, karma, otherworldliness. It has failed to produce such kind of individuals who could go for the rational calculus of the capital. Similarly, it was there in terms of the Confucianism, China. So in other religions, we are finding about the similar kind of perspective, where the religion has not been able to produce such kind of individuals who could go for the rational calculus of the capital. And in absence of this rational calculus of capital, capitalism did not emerge. है ना? So patrimonial है, चाइना का कथा patrimonial है. मैं एक बार बोलता हूं, सुनो, वेबर को ही कोट कर रहा हूं. Weber in the Sociology of Religion also analyzed 6 great religions of the world. However, it has to be remembered that Weber did not try to know the metaphysical essence of religion. Rather, his aim was to know that how religious ideas or values motivated the individual to indulge in a specific type of action. While talking about the Chinese society, Weber reveals that the society was based on a strong kinship system, was traditional in nature. People were expected to be educated, but technical experience was not focused. The form of state was patrimonial. राजा के नाम से, पेट्रियार्क के नाम से हो जाए. Traditional action वाला में patrimonial state. And there was absence of rational administration. Religion did not motivate the individuals to orient their actions to accumulation of capital. In case of India or Indian society and culture, though Weber recognizes the refinement of Indian culture, but writes that the social hierarchy based on religious beliefs, caste system, belief in theory of karma, belief in ideas like karma, punarjanma, rebirth, maya, illusion, the strict law of caste system delayed the path towards economic development and failed to produce such kind of individuals who could go for the rational calculus of the capital. Either it be the field of social, economic or political, the belief on otherworldliness gave way to the fatalism, proving to be a hindrance in the development of capitalism. Similar kind of things were found in other religions, 6 comparative religions, great religions of the world, which was basically found in the West, in which the Protestant or Protestantism, Christianity has played an important role. And that way we talked about the Protestant ethics and crypto-capitalism through the 2 ideal types. So Weber further writes that similar kind of system prevailed in other religions except Christianity. Thus, in other religions, capitalism did not emerge. The process of rationalization or increasing rationality separated West from the rest of the world. और यहीं से बेटा वेबर का सोशल एक्शन का, ब्यूरोक्रेसी का सबसे ज्यादा क्रिटिसिज्म. Why capitalism emerged in a different part, Japan, Germany? Or if the capitalism has to emerge wherever the Protestantism is there, so the Protestants were spread in the different parts of the globe, why not capitalism emerge there? All right. How far Weber has been able to keep his own value neutral? There are many areas on which critically you can think of to criticize, and then the relevance would be there. Now, tomorrow I'll be meeting you for the mentorship, and there I'll be not only talking about the certain criticisms, but we will also be talking about the certain PYQs, and we will be solving your problems. All right? I wish all of you the best of luck. Appear for the test. All right? And then we'll see that how the test has been done. Thank you.